this is Deb Johnson, back with Beginner Basics. And today we're going to talk about scissors. Any kind of cutting implement you hold in your hand that's not a rotary cutter. So let's get right to it. I've laid out here a few things I'd like to talk about with you today. These are my very best scissors. These are Gingher stainless steel dressmaker shears, and you decide what size dressmaker shear that you would like. These no one touches but me. One thing you'll learn if you do any kind of quilting or sewing is everyone in the family needs to be taught that the sewing scissors are mom's only, because it costs a lot. These scissors run about $32 on sale, and it costs a lot to keep them sharp. I have a scissor fob here that I made, and this, when I go to retreats, I know these are my scissors, because everyone has the same tools, and you need a way to show that they're yours. So that's one thing. These scissors are very valuable to me. And these are also left-handed because I'm left-handed. It makes a big difference. When you're a good pair of scissors, look for left-handed or right-handed, but depending on what your need is. Alright, so these are my very, very best. And they're right heavy too. Then these are my second best, and I like these because they're on a spring action. So instead of having to, with this kind of scissor, and you put your fingers in, you have to apply pressure to bring them out and to close them. That uses a certain amount of energy and also can tire your hands. These, you just squeeze to cut. The spring lets them come back out. There's a spring right in here. These are made by Fiskars, and they're called soft grips, and they have all kinds. They have, and one thing also I like about them is they're very flat on the bottom, so it's much easier to cut batting with scissors like this, and plus they open up good. Now, with the one thing I like about Fiskars too is you can get a Fiskars scissor sharpener. Because just like rotary cutter blades, anything else, knives that you use in the kitchen, you will find that everyday use, especially if you're cutting things like fusible fabrics like Steam-A-Seam or Pellon or interfacing, fusible interfacing. Did you notice I started out, they were a little stiff. The more that I pulled them, and what I'm doing is I'm kind of closing this scissor and gently pulling this out at the same time. Okay? And if you were to be able to look down on this, you would see just some little dirt and grime and different things. In fact, there's some little bit of glue right there on these. And let me run my dressmaker shears. Now, my dressmaker shears are so special that I don't mind taking them to someone who sharpens scissors. And don't forget the tip, because that tip, you get a lot of work in there. So I can already feel the difference with those, and these could probably use a little bit more. But as you see, the blades are not as refined, but I have found that Fiskars is a wonderful product. Gingher is probably top of the line, but there are many different companies out. Just look for what fits your hand best. And that, I forgot to tell you with rotary cutters too, it's what works with your hand. Here are a little pair of embroidery scissors. Often you'll find they'll have a curved tip so that you can trim threads and hopefully not cut the fabric at the same time. But these are a little bit hard for me to use. I have very big hands, and they're a little tougher to use, but nice to keep around, especially if you're traveling, you need a little scissor. These I bought on Connecting Threads. They're extremely sharp, and the tip is extremely sharp. They have a little cover you can keep on them, but boy, do they do a good job. And there's another one of my little, and you just make these little scissor fobs. You just get these, you know, look on eBay and try to find little beads, little cute things, anything that marks it as yours. Here is a pair of folding scissors. I used to use these quite a bit. The nice thing is you can put them on a piece of ribbon and hang them around your neck. Make sure, though, they are also sharp at the point, so make sure that you fold them back up before you use them. But this is something you can take, and you can take on planes, and you can hook it to a little necklace and wear it. It won't hurt you as long as it's folded up, and then when you need it. Now, I'm trying to remember the maker of these. Might have been Dritz, something, but look for a brand name so that you know they are nice and sharp. So I was looking for a piece of fabric, and as you can see, they're very sharp. They do the job very well. Very sharp. All right. Now, in talking about scissors, before we move on, I want to stress how important it is that you not cut paper with any fabric scissors. Paper is a wood product, like a saw blade going through a tree, and you have to have it sharpened a lot. Wood, there are chemicals in paper that can etch the blades, dull the blades. You do not use any of your sewing scissors to cut paper. If you want to cut paper, I keep an inexpensive additional pair around that look very different, so I never confuse them. So these are for fabric only. I do not cut paper with these. And you know what helps? When you find a good paper scissor, put plenty around the house. If people can find scissors easily, they're less likely to use your good sewing scissors. Trust me, ask how I know this. In fact, my daughters are all grown now, and their children already know. And my kids hated how I said, don't use my sewing scissors. They all know now, don't touch. They say it themselves, don't touch my sewing scissors. All right, these are called snips. And they have something in common with the Fiskars, in that they have a spring that keeps them open, and you merely push to cut. I love this. This is especially helpful if I'm working on my sewing frame or right by my sewing machine. And let me show you why. You would usually keep a small pair of scissors near your sewing machine. Well, I have to take and put my fingers in the hole, then get them up on my finger to, whoops, get them up on my finger to be ready to sew. Then put them back down and take my fingers out. Watch this. Here, boom, I'm ready. Back down. Here, boom. And even when I try to be fast with my scissors, do you see the different length? I got to get my fingers back out. So snips are wonderful for cutting thread as you're ending sewing. I keep snips right on my long arm. When I do long arm clipping, this is wonderful for clipping your threads. Now for hand sewing and taking projects along, I love these. These were the first that I had gotten, and these are also, as you can tell, made by Fiskars. These are my absolute favorite. The blades on them are remarkable. You can see that spring very easily now. The nicest thing, you pick them up, you squeeze. Especially if you have arthritis or you have big hands like mine. This is so much easier than trying to do this. And the metal parts of these hurt my fingers. So I'm a very big fan in these type of spring action snippers that are spring action. This is a new kind I found at Tooltron, and I got these on sale for $3 a pair. Normally these run about $12. I got these for $3 a pair, so I got two. And you can tell they maybe aren't quite as sturdy as these Fiskars, but they have worked beautifully for me. So I keep every place I sit to sew, I take things with me. In fact, I made this at one of the retreats. The woman brought these pieces, and it's all fabric, but it's been stiffened. And when I get ready to sew in the evening, I take this with me, and I keep things like the snips right here ready to go. Now we're going to talk about, because I feel like these kind of belong in the cutting discussion here, and I've already shown you about my Fiskars scissors sharpener. This probably is about $15. I guarantee you it is a very good purchase. So, I believe in trying the most I can to take care of my tools myself, because it's hard to find time. When am I going to take these tools in to be sharpened? I've got to go back and pick them up, and you spend money for one time. And this is not as good as a scissor sharpener. A scissor sharpener is like a doctor or a dentist. They are very trained, and they're well worth every penny you pay them. But it's just, late at night, my scissors are dull. I can do this myself and get me through to the next day. So now here are seam rippers. Seam rippers are so different. I believe this is a Dritz seam ripper. Then the name of this one, let me see. This is called Seam Fix. And this is a really cool little thing, because it has what looks like and feels like a kind of rubber tip or an eraser tip, and that's exactly what it does. It erases, when you've done the seam ripping, you know all the little pieces of thread that are left behind? Well, you rub this on them, picks up all those little, pulls them right out of the fabric, so you don't have to sit and pick with tweezers. So these are really neat, and this is a little travel size. They come in a bigger size. Here's your tiny little travel size. I believe this is a Dritz as well. And then I've got, this is a scalpel. Now these kind of became popular a few years ago, but I don't see them as much anymore. These are good for certain kinds. Let's say you wanted to take out this seam right here, kind of already started. Then you very carefully could go along and trim the stitches. But the reason I think I don't see them is they're very easy for you to cut yourself, and very easy to cut the fabric that you're using, because you would do this kind of thing, or they could be helpful doing this kind of thing. But boy, do you have to be careful with those. I hardly ever use these. To me, it's just a little risky. And then I put that tip right back on. My very, very favorite seam rippers are my very favorite seam ripper. Maybe it's because Mark bought it for me. But look at this beautiful hand turns made of pecan or pecan. And it's hand turned, and it's so very sharp and nice. These seam rippers, I tend to kind of use them up, use them and abuse them. And if I do a lot of work, they might not last that long. But with this one, it's a finer made metal. Looks like a stainless steel. And you also keep it in the handle like this. And I love this, so you can hook it on to whatever you're working on. But this is wonderful, and you can find these at your actual quilt shops. There are certain people that love turning wood, and the feeling of this in your hand is very nice. So, and oh, I forgot, and I don't know where it is. My next favorite, let me see. My second favorite seam ripper is this Fons & Porter Comfort Grip ergonomic seam ripper, and I love it because it does feel comfortable in the hand, and is very well made, is very sharp. Now while we're here, I a lot of times will just take and put the seam ripper in between the layers of fabric and push. Well, that's fine, but guess what? Every once in a while I will tear the fabric underneath, especially. A very wise woman, Jan, taught me that you go along with the seam ripper and cut every third or fourth stitch, like that. And then when you put your seam ripper in, it's very easy to catch the last few stitches and pull the threads right out. Oh, this is a good way to show you about this version. So you will see the little stitches there? Well, you take this rubber piece and you rub it right over. Let me try. Oh, look here. It just pulls it right off. So you find a lot of different tools. try them and see which one you like better. This is another tool, and I'm including it in with our scissors and seam rippers because what this is for is when you do chain piecing. Chain piecing is where you sew a line of, like, let's say you run this through and you run this right behind it, and so you haven't cut your threads in between, and you end up with what's called a long chain. And how do you cut those threads in between when you're ready to move forward with that fabric? Well, that's where this comes in handy. And let me show you with this. So I bought this little plastic piece. I put it on the wood myself. Mark cut this wood for me. I put it on and painted it just to be cute. You set your seam ripper down in that holder. You put the lid on. Then, when you're ready to use it to cut a seam, you take the lid off and you then just, and this is not for regular seam ripping. This is just pretending that these fabrics are stitched together in a long row. So as you can see, that works very well. But remember to put the lid on. You do not want to come down on that. In fact, this one, it kind of worked well because I broke the point off, because you don't really need the point. So I put it on when I'm ready to use it. When I'm done, I turn it upside down, push it in. It holds in nicely. And there you go. So I think this pretty much covers it. If you have a good workable cover for a seam ripper, it is a good idea because they don't feel good late at night into your finger. I would at first stay away from any scalpel type product. I wouldn't use one of these unless I had been sewing at least 20 years. Just too many things can happen. Seam rippers, it's good to have a travel size. This is probably a good, inexpensive place to start, but I will tell you, you will need quite a few of them. They do wear out. This is a great heirloom. I'll pass this down to my family. It's my very favorite. This is my second favorite, because some of these seam rippers are just, picture after hours of this poking in your hand. How nice is this? And it's just balanced. It feels wonderful. But that's all subjective. Don't forget your snippers. If you have delicate hands and enjoy scissors, there are all kinds of scissors. And don't forget these interesting little things. In fact, when they first came out and they were expensive or hard to find, I took and glued a piece of an eraser on the end of a seam ripper so I could, in effect, make my own. So this is it. This is it for scissors. And it's definitely one of those products. The better you take care of your scissors, the longer they'll last and the better they will work for you. Come back again for beginner basics on Our Time to Quilt. I'm Deb Johnson. Bye-bye.